Well, I'm going to set the context for our conversation first. I am really interested in this idea of sharing sound and the power of shared sound. So, the whole theme behind Gurus on the Spot is about bringing ancient knowledge for current times, specifically for the times that we are living in right now, which feels very tumultuous. And I've been thinking about this whole idea of sharing sound. And it seems to me that that is a particular practice that has been present around the globe in a very ancient way. I mean, I think, and maybe that's partly my imagination, but I think there's definitely a mythological layer to it. And I'm sure that there is a reality to that that just comes through in stories from around the world. And I mean, I know even if I think about my family background, my name Rampal and Ramcharitar, we're a family of bards, of the singing bardic
Oh,
tradition.
oh
Yes.
really? Wow, I didn't know
Yes.
that.
So my grandfather chanted the Hanuman Chalisa every day, and the Tulsidas Ramayana, that sort of that chanting and singing and sharing through sound is really in my blood. So whether it's through listening or through singing and chanting together, I think that this practice of sharing sound is something that we can really benefit from today, where the consciousness is so fragmented. So I'm wondering if you can just speak into that, first of all, from your experience as a singer.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, like you said, I think singing has been used and has been a form of bringing people together in so many different formats, both spiritually and then when you were just talking about that now, I just sort of felt the imagery of, during times of war or when people were, these sort of very difficult times, people still sang and created songs or sung songs that brought them comfort, and I think that's so powerful. So I think that just shows the power of singing in itself. And for myself, I study North Indian classical and semi-classical singing and devotional singing. So I personally experienced the impact of sound and singing from a very young age. And what I'm really experiencing through teaching now with groups, both online and in person, interestingly, it still has an impact online, is that it brings people together, it connects them to their body. We I feel like we're in a time where we are overloaded with noise and information and so many things, so many inputs, so many tabs that are open internally. And I think singing and chanting has this instant effect of bringing us back to the body, calming our nervous system, connecting with our voice, opening our heart. And I think it's something that we feel. It doesn't even need to be explained, which is so wonderful.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I can feel it as you're speaking about it. I mean, do you have a sense of how it works on a more kind of technical level? How does, what actually happens, especially when people sing or chant together?
I wish I had the scientific explanation, but I don't. I wouldn't want to. I don't feel I'm qualified to say that side of things. But I do feel when we sing together, um, this kind of we're sort of tied as soon as we start singing something. I notice it if we're singing Om together. At the start of a class when we're in person, it's so powerful. And I think we are all longing for connection, and there is a lot more disconnection and isolation, sadly, that's happening at the moment. And I feel that the moment we all sing together, that starts to melt away. And I think that's one element that's happening. We're connecting to our voices at a time when we're usually quite quiet during the day or not expressing ourselves enough. And so I think when connecting to any art form, we start to connect to that part of ourself that wants to express and needs to express. It's such a vital part of our health. And I think for the kind of singing that I do and teach, we use a lot of long notes. That's a practice that is a part of the classical tradition, and it's quite rare to hear in terms of vocal traditions to hear sustained notes. And so I think that's why so many people are drawn to this type of music, because it's just very calming on the system to hear a sustained note and to sing a sustained note. Even if it's shaky or, it's difficult at first, there's still something very powerful about developing a practice of singing long sustained notes.
I want to go into that a little bit more. And first, I wanted to just touch on what does happen when we sound together or we chant or sing together. I think that there is what arises through the voice and the voices together is a shared energy field, like
Yes.
literally a shared vibration
Mm-hmm.
that you then participate in. So it's almost as if all of the individual minds or the individual akashic fields somehow now become one shared akashic field. And I think that is where, you mentioned earlier about this, the comforting quality of it. You said even in times of war, people still sing. And I think that's very powerful, that there is a very human impulse. And I think this is so important to tap into what our core humanity is, that this impulse to share sound together does create, I think it actually dissolves the sense of individuality because there's a shared energy field, a shared frequency that's created. And for that period of time, one is able to participate in something greater than oneself that is now carrying you.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned this, the long notes. So I would love to go into that a little bit more, specifically in terms of raga. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the power of raga and how raga works, and maybe start first with what it is, because I know in the past I've heard I've heard people um, say, "Oh, well, ragas are just scales," and these are people who don't know what they're talking about, and a raga is much more than a scale. Can you tell us first of all what is a raga and how they work?
Sure. And it's this ever questioning, theme that comes up with musicians. How do we explain what a raga is? It's non tangible. But so my understanding is that the translation of the word raga means that which colors the mind. And a raga is made up of a minimum of 5 notes and a maximum of 8 notes. And it's essentially, I've been taught to think of it as a musical being, a living, breathing entity that lives and breathes in the ether constantly. All of the ragas are living and breathing right now. And then it's up to us to study the phrases. There's key phrases that every raga has. Through singing and learning these key phrases repetitively, we get to know their personality, their spirit, their essence. They become more familiar. And of course, it can take a whole lifetime to really know a raga well. And through listening and studying with a guru, we are able to understand what a raga is, because this music is an oral tradition, and so it gets passed down from guru to student. And so seeing it as a musical personality, as a musical being, completely changed things for me. It was a huge light bulb moment when I was in class in Kolkata maybe 15 years ago, and my guru, Guruji Pandit Ajay Chakrabarti, he explained that this is what a raga is, because I just couldn't understand. I'd been singing from the age of 4, but I still couldn't quite conceptualize what is a raga. And so these ragas are sung at different times of the day, different seasons. Each raga will have hundreds of compositions connected to that raga. And we also have different lineages in the classical tradition. And so different lineages might express the ragas slightly differently according to where they're from. So the main essence of the ragas are the is the personality, the character that we learn through the phrases. So there is an ascending scale and a descending scale. That's what people sometimes think, oh, that's the rag, but that's not the rag. That's the skeleton, and the phrases are the raga.
This is beautiful. You said that there are different lineages within the tradition, and different lineages may express the raga slightly differently. And I think this is why it's a living tradition. Yes. So
Absolutely.
I'm also wondering, would you like to share to demonstrate maybe your favorite raga?
Sure. Okay, so this, I'll just sing a little bit of what a raga I've just been practicing recently. This is not, just to stipulate, this is not one of the kind of core classical, pure classical ragas. This is more in semi-classical music. Is that okay to sing?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
whatever you wish.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Sa ni sa ga re ga sa ga re sa ni pa ni ni sa sa re pa ga sa ni sa ni sa re ga ma ga ga ma re ma ga sa ga re sa sa ni pa ni ni sa sa re pa ga sa ni sa.
Thank you. What a treat.
Pleasure. That's just a few phrases of a rag called Bilu. That's not all of the phrases. If I go into the phrases, it will take a while. And this was originally a folk melody. That's my understanding. And then it became used as a rag in semi-classical music, where semi-classical, the words have more importance.
So I can speak because I want to ask you next to talk a little bit about bhaava and generating bhaava through raga. So as I was listening to you, I was feeling, I wouldn't say a deep longing, but almost that remembered longing of something very beautiful and exquisite on like a lazy summer day. But like I say, not a deep longing, almost like more like a gentle bubbling stream, but really exquisite. So that is the state that was generated in me by listening to you sing those phrases. And when this generation of mood or state, of course, is very, very important for all of the classical Indian arts. So can you speak a little bit about your experience of bhaava?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's interesting you said that in response to what I sang, because that raga, it can have a sweetness to it. To me, it does feel like that sweetness. And, one of the compositions I'm singing at the moment in this rag has a playfulness to it. It's about dressing up for the beloved. It's a sort of romantic, sweet feeling. And equally, you can get compositions in the same rag that are very much about longing. So I think it's how it's expressed, and that's up to the artist to bring that out. And in terms of bhav and bhava, there's sort of different. I've had different experiences with it. So when studying the ragas, growing up, sometimes I've had, teachers explain, okay, this is the rag, this is the scale that it comes from, this is the time of day, this is the bhav or the rasa connected to it. So I always thought, okay, this rag is joyful, this rag is heroic, this rag is angry, these kinds of associations. But then Guruji, Adriji, he also says that with vocal music, it also depends on the composition. Because you might have a rag that is happy, but if you're singing words of longing, then the bhav changes. So it's not always so easy to kind of give this sort of tick box bhav connected to each rag in a way, if that makes sense. Some people might completely adhere to that, but it did make me think that it does depend on the composition.
Yes, that makes complete sense. And you're making me think actually about how the practice or the tradition of having these rules and regulations and these principles is very important part of a living tradition. But because the tradition is living, those principles and rules and regulations are there as a structure and a foundation. And
Yes.
it is so when we begin to learn and when we are in the phase of being students, and in a way, of course, we are always students, but you know what I mean? There is that long period of time, I would say minimum of 12 years, probably 24 years, when really you're a student.
Yes.
And I think during that time, um, those reference points and the structure, it's important to steep one's self in the structure and to be completely absorbed by the structure. And then what happens after that is that the structure then can start to express itself in new ways through you as an individual artist.
Yes.
So, because I also think that one's individual experiences and state of consciousness in a way of also colors the raga, right, and the way that you deliver it. So, and we know that as performers, each audience behaves completely differently. So, do you see what I mean? So, it really is living and breathing. It comes back to your statement earlier that the raga is a living being. It's always there, and it is expressing in new, forever new ways, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in your work, you have also worked with musicians from very different musical backgrounds and musical trainings. And in this spirit of togetherness and coming together to share sound, can you tell us a little bit about what, what is the healing quality, or what's the coming together? What's that adhesive quality, and how does that work when musicians from different traditions come together?
I think in a very simplistic way for me, I just love that we're all playing with the same 12 notes. I just love it. There's no language, there's no barrier. It's the same set of 12 notes that we're all playing with, but we're expressing and playing with it differently. Of course, in Indian music, both in the south and in the north, we have these shrutis, which are the microtones that are touched upon if we sing a bended note, or some very, very advanced singers can sing those microtones, know what they are. They all have names and able to sing these individual frequencies, but we touch upon them when we bend a note. So that's some of the main differences in terms of how a note might be approached in terms of with other cultures. And we have a lot of ornamentation and touch notes in Indian singing as well. But I think the healing side for me, or concept for me, is that we are playing with the same notes, and let's see how we can come together and create a conversation. Because especially when there is such a strong what's the word, emphasis, sadly, on division, I think we need to be reminded of where we can unite and how we can unite and how we are made up of the same elements. And that's what the great mystics wrote about, and the poets sung about those thousands of years ago. Kabir and all of these great poets, that's what they spoke about. And it's those concepts that really energize me and kind of keep me open to collaborating with other musicians. So yeah, that's the thing that I kind of try to lead with.
No, this is beautiful. So, and this really is the ancient knowledge for current times, that there are these same notes, but look how much exquisite, uninterrupted, continual beauty can be created through people coming together to work with that. Thank you for that. That's really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
You've mentioned your guru a couple of times, so I want us to go into the guru-shishya relationship. Because both of us, of course, you have music guru, I have dance guru, we both have spiritual gurus. And it's, first of all, I will say that for me, the guru-shishya tradition is vital. It's one of the core reasons that all of the knowledge systems in India and throughout Asia actually continue to be living and uninterrupted. And at the same time, it's also a human relationship, and it can be very challenging because of the way it's structured in this hierarchical way. So I will say for myself, it has been challenging. However, I would not swap it out for anything else because the gifts far outweigh the challenges in my experience. And I think that, over time, I've now been able to come to a place where I can have my own artistic identity outside of Paduka's identity. So my dance guru, Padma Subramaniam, I mean, for a start, she's a massive, massive towering figure, as is your music guru. So I think, there is a thing there. Yeah. It's a particular dynamic. So I'm wondering if you can speak into a little bit your experience and where you are now with your experience of the guru-shishya.
I think it is a very complex, concept, and a beautiful concept. Like you, I think I have, hugely gained from the whole experience, and I never thought I would have a guru in this lifetime. So I feel very, very lucky and blessed to have a living guru who is very, very passionate about continuing the lineage and sharing this music. And with him, it's interesting. He was at the peak of his performance career, and it was almost like a divine appointment or a divine message that came to him that he needed to share this music with more people in a teaching capacity, because he was feeling frustrated with how Hindustani music was being taught, the singing was being taught. In Bengal and India, it's a very, very strong part of the culture to learn the arts. Most families, with different incomes, will still find a way to make space for learning dance or singing or poetry or painting or go and watch concerts. It's just very much part of the tradition and the culture. So, which is a beautiful thing. And at the same time, there was so much talent in that area that wasn't being, the blossoming wasn't happening. So I met Guruji back in 2000. I didn't know what I was going to experience when I first met him. He was a favorite vocalist of mine. I hadn't connected with Indian classical vocal music before that, even though I was learning it. So I'd been learning from the age of 4 to 21 when I went to see him. And from the age of around 14, I actually connected more to instrumental music. Because in the vocal music, I couldn't understand what they were saying. I found a lot of the heavier movements difficult to relate to, because it was so different to the sounds that we were hearing growing up in the West. So I knew that there was something very powerful in this raaga music, so I connected more to the instrumental music. And it was when I heard Guruji perform in London at the Queen Elizabeth Hall when I was about 14 or 15, something shifted within my system. It was just like my heart just opened completely, and I was just in complete awe. I've been very lucky with Guruji in that he has seen and recognized that I'm born and raised here. And so as much as he is my guru, he knows that he can't relate to me or connect to me in the same way that he does with his students that he sees every day. So my experience with Guruji is it's this sort of, there's always this longing in some ways because I'm not in the same country as him and his students. And also at the same time, I feel that there's been such a benefit from that as well, because I've had the space to explore my own creativity, my own expression. And he gave me, gave me blessings to do that as well. I had a conversation with him back in 2014. And around that time, in the years prior to that, I'd been working with a lot of jazz musicians and, just very active in different music worlds within London. And, that's the wonderful thing about music. Musicians appreciate different styles. And with jazz music being improvised, so a lot of these musicians that I was connecting with were saying how much they loved Indian music, how they'd wanted to collaborate, connect with it. So that's what I was doing. And so I spoke to Guruji and I said, there's these musicians that want to collaborate. There's these other styles that I'd like to explore. Is that kind of, do I have your blessings really? And he said, yeah. He said, you're born and raised in London. An artist has to respond to their environment. So that was huge for me because I have heard of other artists who have had teachers or gurus who have not allowed them to explore or collaborate and have asked them to only stick to the tradition. And at the same time, like you were saying, that role of being a student for a certain number of years, I'm still very much in that role. But when I had started to collaborate, there was still some sense of a foundation where I felt that I could start to explore with other styles. I think where it can get messy is when we start to collaborate too soon. And I feel that the best collaborations happen when both artists or both styles have a deep understanding of themselves and then they come together. That if it's, sort of like, oh, let's just have a bit of this and a bit of that, it doesn't hit in the same, it doesn't touch us in the same way. And we all know that, but we don't know why sometimes.
I think that's absolutely spot on. So, because we're now very much talking about artistic expression rather than, when we started the conversation, we were speaking about shared sound and chanting and the healing, shared, very human aspect of sound that is open to everybody. And in the progress of our conversation, we're now talking very much about artistic expression. And this is where our commitment and responsibility to the tradition is extremely important. And I think that's something else and something that your comments are sort of pointing to, that regard and esteem, in fact, I would say the reverence for the tradition is extremely important. And when you have that reverence, you become deeply rooted in it, and that there is a difference between experimenting too soon. And of course, experimenting is important, and by their very nature, experiments need to be allowed to fail. Yes,
Absolutely.
but it's about how well can you handle what it is that you have. So I think this, being in a place where the tradition is able to express itself through you freely is always supported by knowing that you have ongoing access to your lineage.
Yes.
Right. So the role of student, like you said, is always there. And I know for myself, it's actually a wonderful relief. So even when I think of Paduka, I think of the lineage, there is great spaciousness that happens within me because we don't have to carry it ourselves.
Yes, true. It's true. Absolutely. And I feel particularly lucky because there's a large guru family, and so at the school that he's set up, there's a number of teachers that teach according to his methodology, and he's constantly updating the methodology. And he didn't share his methodology. He tried it out for 10 years. He thought about how to teach this music, and he's constantly thinking about it. And those 10 years where he was experimenting and exploring it, that's what he was teaching his daughter Kaushiki Chakrabarti, who we all know, who's phenomenal. And then he started the school, and the teachers there are carrying on this lineage. So I feel so blessed that I can speak to some of his other students if I have a question. They're all aware that I'm here in a very different environment where I don't have those musicians around me. So I can always go to one of them and ask a question, which is huge, because this music originally, these art forms and lineages were created at a time when we all lived near each other or around each other or together. We would see the guru every day and live in that shared space of absorbing the art form for a number of years, and then one goes out to share that with the world around them. So we, of course, have a different way of doing that now because of the time that we're in. But I think that's where technology is a blessing as well. It's allowed me to
Absolutely.
do
I
that.
think that is a wonderful note on which to bring the conversation to a close. Actually, the technology that we have available, we can use for so many fantastic things.
Mm.
Yeah, that's lovely. Ranjana Ghatak, thank you very much for being our guru on the spot.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.